The following programming is sponsored by Marc J. Bernstein. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group. Entrepreneur, founder, author, and financial advisor Marc Bernstein helps high-performing business owners turn their visions into reality. Through his innovative work and the Forward Focus Forums, Marc connects entrepreneurs to resources that fuel their success. Founders Forum is a radio show and podcast where entrepreneurs share their journeys, revealing the lessons they've learned and the stories behind their success. Join Marc and his guests for a mix of inspiration, valuable insights, and a little fun. Now, let's dive in.
Good morning, America. How are you? This is Marc Bernstein, as you know. And today we have in the studio Gal and also Scott Reuter, who was on a recent show and who will serve as our co-host and be with us on the panel this morning. So good morning, gentlemen.
Hi, Marc.
Good morning.
And we're going to start with a little conversation we had before the show on the subject of expectations. And I've been doing some personal kind of leadership development work on myself, which of course helps in leadership in business and other things, and in my client relationships, etc. And I'm in a group that works on this on a weekly basis, and we've been talking about the concept of expectations. I've found that expectations, at least in regard to other people, are probably not all that useful, although I've had them my whole life. And expectations often, if not always, if not usually, I guess, lead to disappointment. And I used examples of my children as an example, who I'm very proud of, but at different times and in different circumstances, I've had expectations and been disappointed. And what I'm learning to do, if instead of having expectations, if there's something I expect of them, let's talk about if it's something that they see as part of their life and something they desire to do. And if so, we create an agreement around it rather than me having an expectation and in my own little isolated world becoming disappointed. So I wanted to get, both of your input on that topic, if it's something that you've thought about. I'll start with Scott. Any short thoughts on that, and then we'll get to Gal.
Yeah, I mean, I put high expectations on myself, and sometimes it's difficult to, kind of temper that for others. But, I like the concept of doing an agreement.
You can have agreements with yourself as well.
Exactly. That's true.
So there you go. Gal, what's your thought?
Well, I view expectations as a little bit different than how you defined it, but contextually it probably means the same. Expectations are the visions and the missions that we have for anything in our life, and specifically in business. If you don't have an expectation that you're going to be successful, for example, as an entrepreneur, you're not likely to even get through the first, yard on the football field. But when you have expectations, you have to also set metrics of success and key performance indicators, because what they do is they connect to each other and create contingency-based processes that allow you to include the people that will help you get there. So, for example, as we mentioned before, the podcast, if you are a top-down organization, chances are that your expectations are always going to be resulting in disappointment, because you did not get the buy-in of the folks that need to execute your expectation, and the middle management that has to be the cheerleaders, if you will, for the people that are executing the mission. So I think if you're able to kind of connect expectations to measurable outcomes and predictable and repeatable processes, chances are that your expectations will be kind of manageable. Doesn't mean you're going to reach, a perfect 100% of them, but they're definitely not going to leave you at the 20% level or the 10-yard line, and then the ball goes back to the other team.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate that perspective. So let me introduce you to our guest today. So Scott Reuter, who you've already met if you've listened to his podcast with me, is principal at Product Data Command. And Gal Borenstein is CEO of the Borenstein Group and a business author. And he's the founder of the Borenstein Group, an integrated marketing communications firm specializing in technology, branding and marketing services. He's a recognized expert in digital branding, strategic marketing, and corporate trust building with nearly 30 years of experience guiding C-suite executives. Borenstein is also recently, I believe, the author of several books, well, the most recent one, including What Really Counts for CEOs, and I think the new one, if I'm not mistaken, Gal, is Don't Believe the Hype. Is that right?
Correct.
Yep. So, which is on my list to read. I haven't read it yet, but I am going to get that, and I need your signature on it. I collect those signatures on books. So when we meet in person.
Of course.
And Gal is with us from the Washington, D.C. area. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
So, Gal, tell us a little bit about, I'm interested in your background, education, etc., and also how you became an entrepreneur. And then we'll talk about the Borenstein Group and what it is you do and how you do it and the challenges you've had, etc. So tell us about your beginnings.
Well, I think that if anybody heard that story and in advance and said that this is how life are going to happen, chances are that they couldn't make this stuff up. In kind of a brief version of it, I was born and raised in Israel. At age 18, like everybody else, you have to go into mandatory military service and do your 3 years. But unlike other soldiers that actually had to be in combat or to perform duties as military, I was very fortunate because I was a good writer. I was able to get a position at the Defense Media Communications of the IDF, which meant that instead of being in the ditches, which without there wouldn't be a country there, of course, and I appreciate that. I was flying with generals and with colonels and with different commanders on the chopper. And then when they landed, they do their 2-minute interview with the people on the field. And then they want something that is kind of the sort of a report that then goes into in form of press releases, in the form of media announcements. And what I learned at that point of my life, when I was 18 years old, put in a position to be with generals in the same room, is that there really are people and they have the same exact anxieties and issues and challenges that all of us have. And that really kind of created a trait of starting the day by not thinking that I have to fear or I have to overly respect somebody just because they have a title, but really look at them as a human being. And very quickly, when I finished my military service in Israel, I actually was ready to be in radio, television, and film. But in a small country that had only one channel at the time and 3 radio stations, 2 of them state-sponsored, I didn't see myself getting the experience that I already had. But most importantly, there was no college with a degree that offered communication unless you were waiting for your master's degree. So with the help of my dad, who was a Holocaust survivor that came from Romania to Israel at age 10 and really kind of fits the profile of a parent that wanted his kid to be successful. He saved every penny he had, always drove a used car, and got his son to actually go to college. And I landed that way at Temple University in Philadelphia to study radio, television, film. And fast forward, because I was 21, college seemed to be a combination of I need to get the certificate and a diploma, but also waste of time. Not because I didn't appreciate the courses, but it was the fact that you could pay for 12 credits or 17 credits or the same cost. in seeing my friends that
I'm
I
laughing. I
met
started
through
university
college.
at Temple too. Actually,
Yeah.
another thing we have in
Okay.
common. Yeah.
Well, I tell people that I went to Temple for 4 years, and uh, I don't know many devout people that go to a temple for that long. That's kind of my little joke.
Good joke. Got it.
Uh, but very specifically, I saw 18-year-olds, people that treated college as this is going to be coming of age. I already had 3 years of military service, so I finished my undergrad degree in radio, television, and film in 2.5 years. It wasn't because it was that clever. It's because I realized very quickly that the tuition costs the same if you take 12 credits or 17 credits. And because I didn't have any family here, I did not have any built-in friends. I took every summer session, winter session, in between session, whatever was open for enrollment. And 2.5 years later, I just graduated. And then one of my last classes were about what is the future of communications. And the answer to that was there's going to be a whole revolution that is called telecommunications, where the last chapter of that book that inspired the future for me was that one day internet is going to be something that will be the main hub of information. There will be no libraries. People will be talking to computers, and the computers are going to have the answers. And to do that, you're going to plug in your computer to the electric socket in your house, or the plug. And what's going to happen is it's going to be wired and using electricity, to actually field and kind of boot up the information. So knowing that that was coming, became fascinated with the idea that telecommunications, which was kind of like telling somebody in 1992, it was pretty much like telling them I'm interested in astronomy, or kind of being a space kid. That
Right.
I saw the what's going to happen as kind of a vision, which was that companies are going to become more and more techified, if you will, and technology will go from being an add-on to an enabler. And that resulted in my ability to kind of take that vision and then think about what I want to do forward, which was to create the Borenstein Group.
Interesting. So, and that was right out of college. It sounds like.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you were instant entrepreneur.
I was an instant entrepreneur, and the company started with $2,000 of loans that I took on a Visa credit card that said on the back that when you cash it, there's a $500 fee to cash out your $3,000.
Right.
But I had nothing to lose. I didn't have family here. I didn't have any friends with influence or connections. And I knew what I was strong at, which was writing, which was telling the story, and being able to actually marry two things, which was the knowledge of marketing, communications, advertising, and PR, which are all really part of what I did in my military service, which was to write the headlines, to understand what a story looks like and how it ends and where it leads to, and then parlay that into agency, which I called the Borenstein Group, because I didn't want people to think there was only one person, and then make that into a company that offered a unique value proposition. And that unique value proposition was that we're going to be a marketing, PR, and branding agency that specializes in technology companies, which means you don't have to pay us tuition to earn the knowledge about your company on your dime. We come prepared. We understand already what is the technology that you're marketing, Mr. Technologist. So that really kind of what catapulted us from being nobody to being able to kind of get a lot of CEOs of small to mid-sized companies that were needed, having that connection between communication and admitting as engineers that they're not communicating. They wouldn't admit it. You have to have that conversation with them.
Right.
And I was able to do that. And pretty much over 29 years in business, celebrating the 30th shortly, we're the ones who kind of comfortable talking to engineers and helping engineers be successful.
That is, in my mind, is genius, because I in my business I've dealt with engineers over the years, and it is definitely a different form of communication. With not everyone's the same, of course, but in general, that is a different form of communication required, and you're like the translator, which is I think is kind of brilliant.
Yep. If there was a movie, I would definitely call it The Translator.
And your company has grown to how many employees do you have today?
We have 50 employees. We're one of the top 50 business-to-business agencies in the U.S.
Yeah.
In Chief Marketer magazine, recently publicized.
Nice.
What we did at the beginning is the same thing that we're doing now. It's just basically scaled and expanded to the fact that technology now is embedded in business.
Well, with that, that's a great place to stop for our break, because you've accomplished a lot, but I want to ask you about some of the challenges you've had in the past and tomorrow. So be back right after this break.
What's holding you back from your next big move? At Workshop Strategy, we're more than just advisors. We're partners in your success. We don't just hand you a plan and walk away. We roll up our sleeves and work alongside you to build a strategy that drives growth, strengthens leadership, and makes operations more efficient. If you run a medical practice, pharmacy, healthcare organization, or any healthcare business, we create solutions tailored to your needs and goals. We're here to help you take your business to the next level. Let's lead with innovation. Let's set bold goals, and let's achieve them together. Visit workshopstrategy.com to get started.
We're back on Founders Forum with our guest today, Gal Borenstein, and we have Scott Reuter in the studio. And Gal, I wanted to ask you, I know from experience, because I've worked with entrepreneurs my whole career, I am one, and we've had well over 100 guests on our show. I know that entrepreneurialism is always a smooth ride without any hills and valleys. There you go. That's the laugh I wanted to solicit. So so tell me about that. Tell me about some of the challenges you've had over the years, and in the changes in our political system, because I know you work a lot in the defense area, and with changes in that, I'm sure you're experiencing some challenges today. But let's start about challenges along the way and get to the current ones.
I'd like to really kind of focus on maybe three anecdotal but very strategic descriptions of what challenges I had as an entrepreneur. Number one, I never sold anything in my life before I started the company. Not even lemonade in a lemonade stand.
Right.
But I sold ideas when I was writing. And in the first 5 to 20 meetings where I went to meet CEOs of companies without sales training experience, I actually bought the Brian Tracy sales kit.
Yep.
Books and tape.
Great stuff.
And I literally listened to it every time I went to a business pitch. And very quickly, the most important lesson that I learned was you are the sale. So if you're able to talk about yourself and be vulnerable, you're going to be successful. So the first challenge was really, I never sold anything in my life. I'm going to be an entrepreneur and grow a company if I never done it. And that was one. And it took a little bit to kind of go through the understanding that whatever you're selling, whether it's services, or products or hardware, it doesn't really matter. People buy from people. And if you're able to connect in that both cognitive and emotional level,
yep.
People are likely to at least want to hear you. And of course, they can still say no, but I'd rather hear a no with a reason than a no with slam door, if you will. The second was really the fact that my idea for a niche company was unique, but also looked a little crazy because the only companies in the advertising industry, the agencies, they basically looked at small business of any kind as a pest because they were not spending $500,000 or $1 million. Knowing a little bit that technology companies at the time, like think about Netscape or America Online, or kind of the initial kind of giants, they all began with 10 employees or 15 employees with a very smart piece of software. And they needed somebody to take their XYZ, ABC slash dot point and actually parlay that into something that people understand and get translated so they can kind of move from point A to point B. So having that challenge, it became an opportunity because every time I met an elephant and they were making fun of us because we're so small and so lean, I said, well, let's see what happens to these companies. And I was right about that. The second or the third really obstacle that I always talk about and tell other entrepreneurs is self-belief. If you wake up in the morning and you don't trust yourself because you're number one prepared, and number two have the desire to win and you hate to lose, chances are that you're not going to be successful. I hate to lose more than I love winning. So that kind of dynamo in me and the expectation I set to myself was I need to do this because I have to pay the rent actually. And later, shortly in life, support a family. And that was to me kind of the motivation and still is the motivation. I do this for myself, but also for my family and to create that legacy.
That's great. I think Scott has a question for you.
Yeah, just on the being smaller as a company that's new and stuff like that. Did you find it being an advantage to be flexible and be able to respond to your clients quicker than the big guys typically can?
Absolutely. What I found shortly is that small companies were treated like an orphan child, and being able to promise a better customer service. And in fact, one of my big pitch points were meeting a CEO is if you're going to work with the Borenstein Group, you're going to see me, the CEO. You're not going to get a junior account manager in a larger agency because you didn't spend $1 million. That really endeared me to a lot of those CEOs of smaller companies. They start talking to other guys. The other point was,
by the way, many of those smaller. I just want to mention many of the smaller companies, I'm sure, became larger companies as well.
Of course. But being able to be there when they made that leap into being a bigger company came with the relationship building.
Yeah, you were there. You were there when they really needed you. Yep.
Yeah, and knowing kind of their legacy and what they're trying to build resulted in relationships of 10 to 15 to some 20 years where we rebranded companies 4 or 5 times. And finally, the most important part was being flexible from an economic perspective and taking the approach that this is the fair market value, this is what the industry is charging, so you should too, to saying, well, if you're an engineer company and you don't like marketing, you just have to live with it. What if we created a model where it's kind of like a combination of what we call today a fractional CMO and provide the deliverables that are needed for the price of what you're paying your receptionist that is sitting at the lobby? And I say, yeah, whatever you're paying your receptionist, that's where we're going to do it with higher quality. It'll take 6 months and you'll see what happens. And it worked.
By the way,
hundreds of them.
Very, very, very popular concept today, but sounds like you started that concept.
I don't want to take ownership that I invented it, but certainly kind of the logic of it was that the burden was, or the barrier was not that engineer companies didn't want to have marketing and branding and advertising. It wasn't approachable for them or accessible. And I made the point to make it accessible with the idea that I'm going to be accountable to them CEO to CEO. And that's really where the love connection, if you will, was made.
But, so, by the way, you've done a great job explaining your challenges and the strengths, and all the questions I asked, you covered them. So you did a great job, and we only have, believe it or not, 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you two questions that we have about a minute each to answer. The first one is you've thought a lot about, you've been very conscious, I would say, and aware of your methodologies and your progress and your successes and your challenges. Given that, what are your thoughts about your legacy, Gal? What would you like to leave behind it, hopefully many years in the future?
I really want my legacy to be as a guy that came into an industry where he never worked a day in his life, that broke all the rules and created opportunities and taught people that there are no rules. The rules, you can make them up as you go along, as long as you have foundation of knowledge, strategic motivation, and be a great customer service provider to whomever your customer is. Doesn't matter if they're small or large.
That's wonderful. And along with that, if you could, I know you have 3 sons we talked about earlier, and I'm sure you've shared wisdom with them, but if you could talk to the younger Gal, what would you say to him?
Looking back in kind of retrospect, I would have probably asked for funding and spend a little bit of time kind of fortifying the startup point so it doesn't stress you out to a point where you're literally working 80 hours a week just to pay a loan at a time of $2,000. So definitely being well capitalized, or at least having something in your war chest before you start a company. I would say I would have started the company while I had the job if I had to do it all over again. I did not. I started it from a point where I had to succeed. So it was good, but also very stressful.
Well, listen to Scott's podcast, because that's what he did. And he also said in the same question, he said, enjoy the ride, which I think is part of what you're getting at as well. So, hey, it was a pleasure having you here, Gal. We could talk a lot longer, but we've said a lot, and I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this little show. And we thank you all for listening today. So thank you, Scott, for being here. And we'll see you, and you'll hear us again next week on Founders Forum.
We hope you enjoyed your time with Founders Forum and that you found value to take with you throughout your day. Join us again next week for another episode of Founders Forum on WXKB 1039 HD2.